How's it? Hello. Thank you for watching. It's Chit Chat with Shehla. And this is a program, a live session I do where I bring strong, powerful women on the session for them to share their experiences, their tips, their advice, and for us to make full use of it. I believe every woman has something to share, something powerful, something that can resonate with another woman, and they can really bring something to the table. So keep watching and you can ask questions. I'm going to introduce my guest who works as an operations manager of Housing Association for the Vulnerable Adults. She is strong, committed, and with a lot of grit. She's overcome so many obstacles in life, and she stays smiling. Every time I've spoken to her, had a conversation with her, she's always smiling. In her own words, which I loved because I asked her to send me a bio, and she wrote in her own words, life doesn't happen to her, it happens because of her. And that's just stuck with me. Loved it. So let's waste no time and get our guest, Kirstie England, on. How's it?
Hello, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I was just listening to what I wrote there. Life doesn't happen to me; it happens because of me. It sounds a little bit vain, but it's obviously we can chat about what I mean by that later.
Well, it's someone who may not understand may think it's vain. I don't think it's vain. I think it's a very powerful statement where you actually become aware of your own self.
Yeah, I think it's the realizing that instead of thinking that life happens to us, it happens because of what we bring to the table, and it's how we experience life. We can either look at it as bad things are happening to us, or why am I attracting this? So yeah,
Absolutely.
That's more what I was trying to say.
Absolutely, and that is how I think everyone on Energy Room Share would take it that way, because they're a bunch of beautiful women who really
amazing.
I'm so proud of all of them. We have 4 people watching. Please do write your comments, introduce yourself. You'll get a chance to ask questions. So, Kirstie, first tell me, because I'm intrigued as well. I've known you a while, but what do you call home? Where do you call home?
Well, right now, home is in Edgbaston in Birmingham in England. I was born in England, actually in Sutton Coldfield. My parents immigrated to South Africa when I was 7 years old. So I spent 42 years there. And then 3 years ago, I came back to England. Partly because I was walking away from a toxic relationship, and because South Africa wasn't really a great place to live anymore, and I decided to come back to my roots. And it's been amazing.
And I wrote it on the bio, and you said you came here with nothing, just 2 suitcases and what, £100 in your pocket?
£200, less the cup of coffee in Dubai. So it was a bit less than £200 by the time I got here. Yeah, and I arrived here. I spent a couple of days with my cousin, and then went and did training to become a carer, and went into live-in care straight away and built myself from there. So yeah, in 3 years I've done really, really well. I'm very proud of what I've achieved in 3 years.
Absolutely, and you should be proud. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell us about your earlier life experiences.
Okay. Well, yeah. I probably had a really happy childhood up until about the age of 9, and I was sexually abused by someone very close to the family. And I actually dealt with it the second time it happened myself, as young as I was, and I put a stop to it. But I was threatened and told, if you were to tell anyone, I would actually kill your dad. And I knew the person involved carried a gun. He was an alcoholic. And I believed it. So I kept that very close to my heart for a long time. Became very introverted. I became a tomboy. It was a form of protection. When I was about 16, I tried to commit suicide, and that opened up a lot of questions. And when I told my parents about it, my dad's immediate reaction was he wanted to kill. My mom's was, so much time has passed. There's no point bringing it up. Why would we want to hurt anybody now? Which was really tough for me to take at that time. And then I started drinking. Yeah, at 16, I started drinking, and it just got heavier and heavier. And, first everyone was, it's just a teenage thing. I got married to a guy who was absolutely my best friend, wonderful guy. We had a child. The marriage broke up with an affair, and at that time I blamed him. But honestly, the person I was, I wouldn't have wanted to be married to me either. And from there, the drinking got heavier. I got involved with a guy who was a crystal meth addict, and not just smoking it or snorting it, he was injecting it mainline. He used to beat me severely. Couldn't even lock him out of the house. I don't know if anyone's ever had any experience with a meth addict, but they are so powerful, so strong. He would rip security gates off doors to get back in and stuff. At that point, I actually went into rehab. My boss sent me into rehab. He realized I had a drinking problem. And I came back out, and with this guy living there, I relapsed. And at that point, I realized my son's life was in danger, and I sent him away to live with his dad in Australia. Carried on with this guy. I went to rehab a total of 3 times, so one time with him, and life just got worse. Eventually, the police broke in one night while he was giving me a beating. When you know that that's the last night of your life. And they took him away, but they wouldn't allow me to press charges because I was drunk. And he was actually back at the house 20 minutes later. I eventually got out, and a little while later, I decided for myself I was going to go to rehab. And that was the turning point in my life, was when I made that decision for myself, because the other 3 times I'd been forced in. Other people had told me to go. And yes, I got clean. And I managed to get work again, and I was doing really well. And I was doing great. Then I realized, I'm lonely again, and I got involved with another guy. And I got into a relationship that went on for 5 years, and we worked together. I ended up quitting my job and working for him, and he had borderline personality disorder. So I actually became a prisoner in my own home, where everything is walking on eggshells. And that's the relationship that I left South Africa over. I literally did everything behind his back and packed my 2 suitcases, phoned a friend a few days before and said, get me out of here. And having come over to the UK and all that sort of thing, as much as I'd built myself up again, I'd had great jobs in those 6 or 7 years of being sober. And I thought I had everything back on track, but I was still getting into this abusive style of relationship. Got back to the UK, same thing. I did a year of living care. I met a guy who was like, let's move in together. Let's go off and get a house and all this sort of thing. And moved in with him, and same thing again, manipulation. And
so then the pattern repeating.
Yeah, the pattern was just repeating. And I was like, what's going on? And then last year in March, obviously I met a coach and started working with her. And the realization came to me that after 11 years of being sober or clean, let's say clean, the substance is gone, but the behavior and the patterns are still there. And then I realized that, you can go through the rehabilitation and you can take the substance away, but that substance is actually only a symptom of what's really going on underneath. So I kind of realized that it wasn't the drinking, it was the stinking thinking. And that's when I started working on that. And yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear about all of that, but what I see is, yes, you've gone through a lot, but the strength, and you've come out the other end, the beauty in you, obviously those experiences you've gone through, nobody should have to go through it. And that's a lot, but it's like the pattern you're saying repeats. And you mentioned at the start you had a good childhood. Do you think it all started from the age of 7, when unfortunately you were subjected to those experiences?
I think that's what a lot of us think. And when you're in a rehab and that sort of thing, and you get short sessions with psychologists and all these highly trained people, and we tend to jump to those big events in life as to what causes us to make bad choices. Because at the end of the day, that's all it is. Being an alcoholic and a chronic alcoholic, I nearly lost my life to it. It was a choice I made. It was a coping mechanism. I chose to go that way. I could have reached out for more help, if I wasn't getting it at my parents. But I made a choice to drink. And every time I make that choice, I was actually just hurting myself more. We're self-medicating, but the fact is I made a choice to do it.
Were you aware, Kirstie, at that point when you were over drinking, was there a part of you that was saying you're not doing the right thing and stop? Or were you just...
Yeah, you are aware, and a lot of people will tell you it's a cry for help, which it is in a way. And a lot of people say, acknowledging that you've got a problem is where the start of the solution is. And I acknowledged every day, geez, I need to stop drinking. I knew I had a problem. In fact, the difficult part with an addiction is not the acknowledging you have it. It's accepting that you have to make a life change. You have to change your entire way of life. It's not just accepting it or acknowledging it. You've got to accept that your entire life has to change. The people you see, what you do, the way you think, the way you behave, everything. It's not just acknowledging you've got a problem, because anyone can acknowledge they've got a problem. You've got to decide to do something about it and do everything in your power to actually beat that problem.
So what do you think, from your experience, what made the acceptance difficult? What took so many years to do something about it?
If I had the answer to that, I'd probably be pulling in millions. But it's very much a personal choice. And a question I get asked a huge amount is, how can you help me to get my husband to stop drinking, or my partner to stop drinking, or my dad or my mom? And the answer is no. It's a personal choice. It comes down to the individual. Nobody can change you. No one can change your mind. And the intervention might make you stop and think. I mean, I had 3. It was when my life got to that low and I sat and looked at myself and I thought, you know what, I just nearly died. And if I hadn't died from the beatings, I would have drunk myself to death. And is that what I really want? And that was the turning point where I went, something's got to change. If I want to actually live, and I sent my son away and he was the love of my life. He still is. And that was to save him. And then I realized I need to save me. And I'm the only person who can do that.
Absolutely. So yet you sent your son away, which is such a hard thing to do. And yet it took you years to save yourself.
Yeah. Well, I sent Brendan away when he was 11. We had planned for him to go to Australia for high school anyway, so I sent him a year earlier. And I thank God that I made that realization when I did, because otherwise he'd have been exposed to so much more than he already had been. He'd already seen me being beaten a couple of times. And I thought, I do not want my son to grow up thinking that this is the normal way of life. And yeah, you know what? There was so much guilt for so long attached to me sending my son away. Until I realized that guilt isn't love. And because I loved him so much, I sent him away to save him. But that I actually really totally shut myself off to love at that point. It was like, if you love something, you lose it. So that was another big thing that happened last year, was I had to really turn around and say to myself, you are worthy of love. You know, you're allowed to open up to love again. You're allowed to love yourself. You know, drop the guilt. You can't look back. You can't fix the past. You can't undo things that are done. You know, it's impossible. All you can do is celebrate what you have achieved, what you have overcome, and keep moving forward. So yeah. So
true. And it takes a lot of courage and strength to be able to say that and to be able to do that. So in your bio, you wrote, you have this uncanny ability to hear the unsaid. And I thought I'll leave it till today to ask you, what did you mean by that?
I just find when I'm talking to staff and that sort of thing, quite often people skirt around an issue. You know, they'll say, I feel this, or I've noticed that. And they never actually get to the point. So what I've found is, if you actually allow people just to talk and you just encourage them to say what they think they want to say, and you actually listen to what they're missing out, I can't explain what I mean by it. It's people talk around what's really bothering them. We don't like to actually say what the real problem is. So if you let people talk around things enough, you realize what they're actually getting at. And you can actually turn around and at the end of it and say, so what you'd actually like to do is this. And they kind of go, oh, well, I hadn't thought of that. But now that you mention it, and especially with addicts, because addicts like to hide things a lot. When after my own rehab, my last successful one, I actually stayed on for 10 months and I lived there. I said, I want the roof over my head, and I'll work for free. And I worked with a young boy who had been in jail in Saudi Arabia. He was arrested there for car theft, and he was a hard youngster. He was about 16 years old, heroin addict, and nobody could get through to this child. And I mean, the guys used to taunt him and push him, and he just got angrier and angrier and angrier. And the one day I was doing his detox treatment, and we were sitting in the medical room, and he was sitting on the bed, and you know, I was talking to him, and he was like, yeah, no, whatever. And I said, you know what, Ash? I said, you and I are very much alike. And he said, well, why is that? I said, you don't actually put up walls to keep people out. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, what you want is to find somebody who cares enough to break them down to get in. And this child, I get goosebumps, he just started to cry. And he sobbed for about an hour. And then from that day forward, he changed. He started participating, became part of the community, and just completely opened up. Just because somebody actually didn't look at the hard exterior he was trying to portray. They realized what was actually going on inside.
Absolutely. So not just the surface, what people portray. And a lot of people, I think majority of people portray something else when they're trying to hide something inside. So that's like a born natural coach in you then, Kirstie.
Yeah.
I hope you're going to take it that way.
No, it is. I do have a natural ability with people. I find it in my work all the time as well. I mean, when I started this job in May last year, there were 3 of us working. My team is now 22, and that's through the pandemic. So the business has grown incredibly. And I'm really close to all my staff. I know when something's wrong. I can find out without being intrusive. I make people think. I love getting the girls in the office up every now and then when we're having a really tough day. I'll go, you know what, dance time, and just put on the song. And the first time I did it, they all looked at me and went, the boss has gone nuts. And I was like, no, seriously, there were only like 2 of us in the office one day. I'm like, come on. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, get up, put the music on and dance. And it's just, you pick up on people's vibe. And when they're having a bad day, being able to get them up and get them going. Yeah. I love people.
A boss who dances, a boss who makes you dance.
Yeah. It's better than making you cry.
Absolutely. That's so true. You've been through a lot, Kirstie, and the half hour that we allocate for this show was never going to be enough. But I'll just let you know first, there's a lot of people watching, and they've been watching throughout. There's Usma Farouk from Pakistan. There's Aisha Hussain was here. Yasmin Khan is here. Aisha Naveed is here. And I'm sure someone said it was an empowering statement, so we've gone past it. But what is the one or maybe 2 things you would say? Because addiction is not only alcohol, addiction can be to anything else. So the 1 or 2 things you would say, one, your turning point, and then the tips that you sort of picked on, you would really like somebody to know about.
Well, like I said, for me, a big realization was that it wasn't about the substance. It doesn't have to be a substance. It can be sex. It can be gambling. It can be shopping, whatever. That is just a symptom. We all look at an addict and go, look at what they're doing to themselves. And it's a symptom of what's actually going on underneath. Addiction is about instant gratification. It's a quick fix. So whether it's shopping or gambling, it's something that makes us feel better quickly. So it takes us away from what actually the real problem is.
True.
And so many people say, okay, send an addict to rehab for 28 days. Okay. And I can tell you one thing now, the whole premise around 28 days is it takes 28 days to make a new habit. You got to remember an addiction, like for me, it had started at 16. I got clean at 40. You don't clear that sort of addiction in 28 days. It's a long-term thing. 28 days will get you clean. There's a lot more work to be done after that. It's a lifelong thing, one day at a time. True. And there's always work to be done. A big thing I learned in rehab was a little saying they had, which was, we all tend to feel, act, and then think. And we used to call it FAT, and we had a triangle. So, you have a feeling, you have an emotion, and we act on it. We react. And then we think about it afterwards, and we start the whole cycle again. So say, for example, somebody does something that makes you feel angry, and you retaliate. And then you walk away afterwards and you think, should I have done that? And then you start to feel guilty about it. and then you maybe go and have a drink because you feel guilty about it. Then you think about it afterwards and you're remorseful, and it becomes a whole cycle. So what we used to teach the guys to do is to change it to feel, think, and then act. So when you have that feeling, like, accept it, walk away, think about it, think about where it's coming from, and then decide whether you need to act on it.
Yeah.
And that's worked really well for me, because normally when you start thinking about where the feeling comes from, it's not attached to that instant, that moment. It's attached to something deeper. And when you realize where it comes from, you can deal with it. And then you actually go, you know what, I'm all right.
Absolutely. So that's very interesting, because one, not giving a reaction. Two, getting to the bottom of why something triggered you. What is actually deep in, which is bothering. Someone's asked a question, what frame of mind a person would be in to get into toxic relationships again and again? So obviously we've covered a lot of it. However, what would you say?
Self-love.
Sorry?
It was totally lack of self-love. As I said, I think I had completely shut myself off to love at that point, because everything that had happened up to the point where I sent my son away, and my son was my source of unconditional love. And then I basically shut down to love. And, you know, the other thing is, you got to understand that somebody doesn't come out with a badge going, I have a personality disorder, or I'm an abuser. They're normally really, really charming people. So the fact is, lack of self-love, not thinking you're worth anything better, and also not having boundaries. So when you do start to realize that things aren't right, you haven't got the boundaries in place to start with, to say, you know, this doesn't work for me. But yeah.
So true. So true. Lastly, I'd ask, Kirstie, any coping strategy in a nutshell you would say that could really benefit someone?
Yeah, like, as I said, that feel, act, think for me is great, because it's like holding up a mirror to yourself. So I do it all the time. When something triggers me, I try to walk away, stop, think about it. If I don't have time during the day, then what I'll do is I'll journal about it at night. So I'll realize what it is. As I say, look at why is this coming up for me? What's it triggering that I haven't dealt with in the past? And then I normally find that afterwards I find a lesson out of it. And then it goes into my gratitude journal, because I'm grateful that I've learned this lesson. And it's only by learning lessons that we actually move on in life. And that's the whole thing, is you've got to keep moving. It's about change. It's about change. Change is the only constant.
Absolutely. I love your little statements. Thank you so much. At the end, I'm going to ask you to I was going to ask you to sing a song, or read a poem or a quote, but you've told us you love dancing.
No. Yeah, I would, Shehla, but this illness this week has left me still a little bit breathless, so I'm going to skip that one.
Okay.
But I've got two little quotes that I love. One is from someone called Nikita Gill, and that is, the ghosts of all the women who used to be are so proud of the women who you have become. And I think all of us who are in here can probably relate to that. We've all buried ghosts in our past, and they're standing there and they're applauding us and going, hey, look at you now.
Beautiful.
And the other one is from Jensen Chiro, and this is probably my favorite, is love yourself, because it is the holy grail of happiness.
Love that.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Thank you for sharing that. And Uzma Farouk said thank you to the response. She was the one who asked the question. Aisha Naveed is saying thanks, Kirstie. And thank you from me, Kirstie. Thank you. Absolutely. Yasmin is saying thank you as well. Thanks for taking the time out. I know you've had a busy week and it's the end of the week, so you can now relax.
Absolutely.
Enjoy.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come in and share with all of you.
Absolutely. It was wonderful.
Thank you,
So
Shehla.
we say goodbye now. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.